Quick break, and we're back. Part 2. Midterm assessment, which must be completed by Friday lunchtime. Now, when you click on that, I've set it as a Google form. There are no multiple choice. Every answer is an open answer paragraph. Email address, again, the email address linked to your Google Classroom account. Your major, like English education or computer or education. Student number, name, type in Korean. And every one of the next 10 questions is worth 2 points. They are exactly as in the rubric. So yeah, each part in turn, I've asked a question which relates to this. So the first question is about this. Were there a suitable number of word and word groups reviewed? How many word groups and words were reviewed? And any suggestions for improvement? Now, each question is mandatory, hence the red star. So you must write something. All of it is based on the, if I get rid of this, all of it is based on the rubric. So as long as you've understood this and anything you're not sure about, go back to Weebly and check that unit, the PDF, to get more information. Right, let's look more closely at some examples. Now I'll start with some examples from previous students in the past. So giving a quick outline of the different sections is good. Icebreaker is not essential in the script. Normally it's just a quick question, you know, how are you, what do you do? But you could add that. Review, make the craft activity. So this person has the right parts for a crafts activity. You do not need to write what students say, okay? It should be intuitive. I should be able to guess. Only in situations where it's important do you need to add that. Lots of questions in this one is good. And this person's added a table. You don't have to add a table. It wasn't necessary here. Right, so that's one example. Another crafts example, like goals, good, except it says lesson goals, let's make 2 flags. Well, that's not a goal, that's a practical activity. Talk about what you like. Well, it couldn't be more vague. That's not a specific goal. Be specific related to the language you're trying to practice and consolidate. Materials, you might list some materials you need. You can see this student has given a very short script, and that's it. So this is very low quality work. You're going to need to add a lot more language than that. You're aiming at an absolute minimum of a 15-minute lesson. The craft lessons are usually 30 minutes because it takes time while you demonstrate and students make the craft alongside you. But yeah, you might add any links to materials that you've added. But again, ideally, put it in one thing. If you're using something like Microsoft Sway, or here there's a Padlet, it looks like something else, fine. Just add the hyperlink and I will be able to access that. Okay, one more crafts example. There's no outlet or index outline or index provided, but we've got review, which is preparation activity. If there are small spelling mistakes like this, it's not a big deal. But again, if you're typing, usually it's quite easy to do a quick review and check the spelling and grammar. Better still, enable Grammarly. So if you install something like Grammarly, you can log in and it will show you the typical errors you have. Another one I've used before is Ginger Software. And that one, I think it doesn't integrate quite as well, but when you go there, there is a grammar checker. It's free. Oh, you can add to Chrome. So especially if you're doing Google Docs, it shows you any errors that come up. Any of these, now I don't correct, I'm not grading for accuracy. Spelling mistakes and things, not a big deal as long as I understand what you're trying to say. But these are small things that are easy for you to do, and it shows me that you're putting in effort to avoid obvious mistakes. So when you're typing, it's easy to correct. And if we look at the craft that this student is making, sentence sliders, so they're making their own, fine, good. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4 directions, and that's it. That's far too short. Now the craft could be easy to make, but there's lots of different things that you're going to be asking and paraphrasing. Draw lines. Well, how many? On the paper at regular intervals. Where? Imagine that you're demonstrating. So you might say, if it's like this, so draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lines on your paper like this, right? And you might ask a question. How many different sliders are there? There are 5, right? So 2 lines for each slider. Now, how many sections are there here in the green slider? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? So turn the statements into questions. Paraphrase wherever possible. Expand. It's a very important part of going with students in lockstep in the learning speed that they are able to follow. Now, to make sure I have time to cover my model script, which is the one you're using for your midterm assessment, I'm going to go to that right now. Now, as I said, in if you go to the micro lesson area of Weebly, there are 5 types. I've given you some student examples of crafts, right? There's also 1, 2, 3 other ones that we haven't covered yet. So I'm skipping straight to an example of this phonemic awareness activity. So when we look at that, as I said, I've got many short activities, including some extras, which are optional, as any good teacher will prepare. So I start there. Good morning, everyone. Right. It's not an icebreaker, but I don't really need it here. We're focusing on the activities. Isn't it a great day to play? So why am I saying that? Day, play, do add. I don't need to add if students have answered what they say. I'm just writing my language. Right, day and play rhyme. We learned about rhyming words last week. You're always reviewing things you've already done, either previously in the class or in a previous week like this. Use the board and the screen. You're pointing to things. Many of you will have either a PowerPoint or some pictures or a story or a song that you show on the screen. This particular type pronunciation, there's not really much I can do on the screen except for if I were to show how to pronounce different sounds or words, but I'm using myself for that. Right, I'm asking questions. Some of them might be individual questions. And I'm checking. Instead of saying, do you understand, or can everyone see the difference? Which I don't know if they can. So I'm trying to be specific. Can you see a different word that rhymes with dog? Is there another word that rhymes with dog? It's paraphrasing. That's right, James. Let's make sense. Now, occasionally I've added things that I am doing. I feel this is necessary to show you, the reader, or in your case, for you to show me, the reader, what you're actually doing. Not just talking is a key part of our course. Showing me that you are demonstrating and making language visual. showing the language, and that could be pointing to it on the screen, on the board, on cards. Right, so there's lots of questions throughout, as you can see. Even making teams. Instead of just saying, okay, make 5 teams, walk through it. You see, all of this is all about teams, right? Let's make teams. How many are there in our class? So I'm getting them to do the work. They're thinking, and they've any opportunity to make students feel success is good because they're along with you. They're along for the learning ride. 5, right. Now, I've decided to use a different technique for making teams. Rather than just saying you, I'm saying, okay, whose birthday is in December? How about January? Okay, you 5 are team 1. And of course, I'm pointing to the 5 whose birthdays are in December and January. Was born, and I continue like this to make my teams, right? Right. In your team, only one person plays. Who's first? So again, you could say, Joe, you're first, but questions are always good. The more that students feel in control of the learning, the outcomes, the better. Now, I've tried to keep it compressed. I've actually numbered the scripts. You don't have to, but it's a way for me to give better feedback when I say, okay, in number 24, we've said this. You can bullet point it or that. And then I can refer to each different activity more easily when I'm giving feedback. All right. As I said, make sure you include any materials. I've put it into the script so it's easy and it's in one place. Now, I've added here jump up word cards, a separate activity. It should be a little more difficult. Look at the screen. What's the story called? So again, instead of me just telling students the story is called blank, I'm asking to see if they're listening and following. Does anyone know the story? Why ask this question? Well, if they do know the story, maybe they can quickly tell it, what they remember, even in Korean, because again, they'll feel proud, that student, to know the story and be able to tell others. Now, because it's a phonemic awareness activity, they shouldn't be able to see the words and the letters. It's a focus on listening, right? So whether you do for the 5th micro lesson, whether you're doing listening or phonemes, it's focused on listening, not reading or watching. You might add hints. Right. And here I've added a hyperlink to the actual video from YouTube. And again, next activity, slightly more difficult again. Each of these activities is probably only 3 or 4 minutes. It's quite short if you have success with the activity. So here I've just said, okay, it's a line game, everyone stand up. And I've got a few different directions in one. It's just to avoid the script spreading out. I've tried to keep it compact, that's all. And this one is focused on R and L, which is a little, or rather, and L, which is a little more challenging. Then we've got T and Th. Okay. Add the directions. As you progress through your lesson, students are able to work more independently. So at the start, you're giving more help, and at the end, you're giving less help. At the start, you might be doing a whole class demonstration activity, but in the end, they might be working individually or in pairs. So that's what's happening here. Pairs with a partner. You be the teacher. So this is, again, where they're working independently, and you get a chance to listen to see who's pronouncing correctly, who needs more help, more practice. And then the optional extras, which I've provided here, but you don't necessarily need to. Maybe English students, you might be keen to show me the different ideas that you have or ways to fill in time at the end of a class for those who haven't finished. And then I've provided a practice. This is something I've added, did I make this myself? No, maybe not. There's a lot of things you can find from the internet, of course. In this case, I've tried to focus on and sounds because that's the more difficult one, and that's the last thing. Making your own materials is also good. So I've gotten some of these for the net, and I've adapted other ones. Now, the reason, for example, they played for the team, they prayed for the team, it's the same as minimal pairs, which is just like one word, pray, play, long, wrong. But by making it in a sentence, which makes sense, they're more focused on being able to produce the correct sound in context. Because sometimes when you isolate a word, it sounds a little different. Like woman and women, it depends on the sentence. So making it more natural makes it more fun, more real. And again, you can find lots of good examples on the internet. Don't be afraid to dig the internet mine for resources. I mean, I do. It's a good way to reduce the amount of time you spend creating your own things. Okay, that's as much time as I'm going to spend on that. Once again, all you need to do is upload this midterm assessment, complete this Google form. I think I said by Friday 23rd, lunchtime. So that'll give me a chance to go over it and see what your work is and include feedback in the video for next week. 20 points. Now, in the time we have left, let me just quickly show you some other micro lesson types. This one is grammar. Now, students said word groups, okay, topic, well, it's not really a topic, and they've said verb deformation. I don't know what that is, but all you need is, for grammar, is to say I'm looking at will versus going to, or capital letters versus small letters. You're doing a choice, this or that. It could be one choice or two choices, like I did with phonics, l, and t, th. That's all. So let's find out about type of be verb and general verb. This is going to wash right over children. They need to see what you mean. So you're reading some examples on the board, probably, or on the screen. Right? Okay. And be careful with your language. Next, general verb is a representation of what we do. Most of you listening to this now won't understand what that is. These are children who don't speak English necessarily. So keep it simple. Imagine that they don't understand, so they need to see by you showing on the board, on the screen, with cards, what you're trying to convey, what you're trying to say. And examples are always good. Okay, one more grammar script. Laying it out in a table can be a good idea. And showing me the sort of time, well, that's not a bad idea as well. Do remember what we learned in grammar. That's right, we learned about singular and plural. Avoid meta-language. Meta-language is language describing language. Singular, plural, period, exclamation mark. There's a lot of words we use to talk about language that you don't need to say. So instead of this, you could have examples on the board, right? What's this? One bus. What are these? Two buses. Right, so we looked at S and ES. Any others? And you give some examples like that. One pencil, two pencils. Notice there's no E, and this is you reviewing. Okay, and yeah, if you've covered that, you might need to focus on those. So this counts as your grammar point. Is it an S? Is it an ES? Or is it an IES? Right, and again, not teaching, but reviewing. Everyone understand? Bonk, avoid that question. You might show me the cards that you used in your script, or attach them to the bottom of the script, ideally. Okay, quick look at a song script here. Greeting, review, arousing interest, engaging students, ESA, right? This student's gone for a very, it's very condensed and it doesn't show as much of the language as I want. There's not enough language in the script. So you should be saying a lot more. Here's another song script, right? We've got the questions. Now here, they've said, and in brackets, they've said upside down the flashcard written syllabus. In other words, show the word syllabus on a flashcard upside down. So this is, I can see from the teacher toolbox as a teacher technique. The idea of that technique is to make students laugh and to point things out to show that they're watching. So really what you're doing is you're holding a card up upside down. Here's my book. And right, we're going to learn this book. And obviously students, somebody is going to say, oh, teacher, you're holding it upside down in Korean. That's your opportunity to say, oh, sorry, oh, it's upside down. Can you read it upside down? What's it? No. Right, so you can respond naturally without having to add what students say, and to show that I've actually understood that it was you doing that deliberately using a teacher technique. Right, listen to the song, main activity. Okay, and in this case, we're using a follow-up. So for songs, books, we're doing follow-up, and grammar activities also need a follow-up. Okay. For stories, as we said, you're doing before reading, while reading, and after reading. So if you say preparation, I'm not sure that you got that point, but preparation is the same as before reading to build interest and review the keywords needed for the main activity. So they've gone here to core activity. So they've maybe missed out while reading. Right, so yeah, that's a problem. That's a mistake here. And they probably called it follow-up, which means, again, they should have said, actually, you're not doing follow-up, you're doing after reading, which is the same as core. If you're doing it as a doc, sometimes, this is a PDF actually, I'll add comments on the side like this. So make sure you pay attention to these because I spend time adding different comments wherever I can, good and bad. You'll notice on weebly, I've got storybook activities and story maker. It's the same category of micro lesson. Most people choose a storybook because it just means you choose an existing book. It's either on the web, digitally, which is probably better for our COVID classes, but it could be only a physical book that you have in the class. Story maker means you make your own story. It's not as hard as it sounds. It just means you can avoid any difficult language and focus into the specific vocabulary that you want. And there are lots of story making sites that when you click on that, you'll find out that we can cover later. Now that brings us briefly to the last one. When you click on listening lessons, you'll find some examples. Now it's really listening and pronunciation. It's been able to first recognize certain sounds and then be able to produce them correctly. And so instead of me providing just main activities, I've provided a number of different things that you could focus on. Those who've chosen listening or phonemic awareness will probably need to, review it with me, make sure you're doing the right thing, because it's a little different format, as you can see from the midterm assessment. And I've even added a whole booklet here. So when you click on this one and you go to page 32, or if I start with 31, it shows you, if you don't believe me, how phonemes can be done with children and why it's important. And lots of nice short activities like odd one out, which is in the teacher toolbox. All right. I think these are the most interesting ones. I love doing phonemic awareness. You will need to think carefully about it, though, for those who are doing it. Last thing, hopefully everyone's aware of the micro lesson schedules, which should be up and completed on the website. Let me check. Right, I'm just pulling up education quickly. So, for example, this is week 8 right now. Those 3 people from education must submit their micro lesson script next week, ideally by class day. So education, you're Thursday, you should submit on Thursday, but I have also added in the instructions, I will accept by Friday lunchtime. But English, computers, you should be submitting yours on Tuesdays. Special education, music, art, you should submit your scripts by Wednesday. Practical arts education, Thursday, ideally. Okay? Right. Hopefully that gets you up to speed. It's not an easy midterm. It is important preparation for the micro lesson, and it will help reveal which parts you're having trouble with and help me improve your micro lesson scores. Okay, another week done and dusted. I hope you are doing well out there and actually looking forward to seeing everyone, real people, in week 12. Okay, see you